They say you should never get too comfortable at your job, but when you've spent 16 years running a production line without a single safety violation, without a missed deadline, without even a single product recall, comfort isn't the word. It's commitment. I'm Amanda Reyes. I'm 47 years old, and for most of my adult life, I was the senior floor coordinator at Mlen Manufacturing, one of the largest consumer packaging plants in the Midwest. I started there when my daughter was in kindergarten. By the time she graduated college, I was the one keeping the machines humming, the workflow steady, the numbers green. My team called me the anchor. My supervisors called me reliable. And for years, that was enough until one Monday morning, I was called into a conference room with beige walls and a forced smile from HR. We're restructuring, they said, like it was a weather report. Not performance-related, just a strategic shift. I remember how the word strategic landed like a punch in the ribs. I wasn't fired. No, that would have made too much noise. Instead, they said they were phasing me out. My position was being streamlined into a new role, one that would be filled by someone younger, cheaper, more digitally native. Whatever that means. And we'd love for you to help with the transition, said Lauren from HR, her voice soft like she thought I might cry. I didn't cry, I nodded. Because after 16 years, you learn not to react until you're alone. The new hire was a 25-year-old named Devin. Fresh MBA, zero factory experience. He wore loafers on his first day, the kind that don't survive a warehouse floor. He introduced himself as a process optimization guy and smiled like this was his sandbox now. They asked me to train him 1 week. That's what they gave me. I spent that week showing him the layout, the pressure points, the quirks of each conveyor belt. I handed over my manuals, my spreadsheets, the annotated logs I'd maintained over a decade and a half. I even walked him through the emergency shut-off protocol, the one I wrote myself after a near miss back in 2010. He didn't take notes. The night before my last day, I stayed late, alone. I walked the floor, listening to the quiet tick of the machines, the hum of the automated packaging arm. Every corner of that space held a memory. Training new hires, fixing systems during storms, working through holidays so others could be home with their families. I didn't take a selfie. I didn't post about it. I just stood there and let the moment imprint on me. Then I turned in my badge. Nobody threw a party. No goodbye card. Just an auto-generated email. Thank you for your service. We wish you success in your next chapter. I wasn't angry. Not yet. At first, it felt like grief, like I had lost a part of my identity I didn't even know I still clung to. My daughter Maya came home from grad school that weekend. I tried to pretend everything was fine. You okay, Mom? She asked over dinner. Yeah, I said, pushing vegetables around my plate. Just adjusting. She looked at me the way daughters do when they know their mothers are lying, but choose not to press. Instead, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You built that place, she said. Don't let them make you feel disposable. I smiled, but inside I felt hollow. Over the next few months, I did what I've always done. I observed from a distance. I still had friends on the floor. People who texted me, called me on bad days, told me things they weren't supposed to. And slowly the cracks began to show. Missed quotas, safety violations. A small injury swept under the rug. Then 2 more. Customers started complaining about late deliveries. The maintenance backlog tripled. One of the machines, a pressure sealer I'd spent years tuning, failed during a double shift, damaging thousands of units. I stayed quiet until the day Mia sent me a screenshot. It was a Reddit thread from a whistleblower account. Working at MLAN is a disaster. Ever since they pushed out the experienced staff, it's been non-stop chaos. I don't feel safe. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. And for the first time since I left, I didn't feel sad. I felt something else. Something sharp. This wasn't about cost cutting anymore. This was about the cost of forgetting who built the system in the first place. And I was done watching from a distance. The first time someone reached out, it was subtle. A message from Becca, one of the shift leads I'd trained back in 2015. She never called me unless it was important. "Hey, Amanda. Can we talk? Something's going on." We met at a quiet diner off Route 9. She looked tired. Paler than usual. Her hands shook slightly as she stirred her coffee. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said quickly, but I didn't know who else to call. "You're never a bother," I replied. "Tell me what's happening." She took a breath and launched into it. Missed safety checks, workers quitting midship, Devon making decisions without consulting anyone on the floor. She described a conveyor jam that wasn't reported for 2 full hours because the night lead didn't want to wake the new boss. Thousands of units had to be discarded. "I tried to raise it to Lauren in HR," she said, voice low, but she just said, "We're in a period of transition. Be flexible." I felt a tightness crawl up my spine. "Has anyone else said anything?" She nodded. "Yeah, quietly. But no one wants to risk being seen as a problem. You know how it is." I did. For 16 years, I watched how the company handled problems. First, they ignore you, then they isolate you, then they replace you. Becca looked at me, her voice barely a whisper now. "Amanda, I think someone's going to get seriously hurt." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch with the lamp on low, flipping through old notebooks from my time at LAN. Process maps, contingency plans, even old floor rosters. My notes were always detailed, obsessively so, some would say. But now they felt like breadcrumbs. Proof that the system had once worked, that it could again. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't an employee anymore. I had no title, no power, just a box of records and a rising sense of responsibility. Then I remembered the whistleblower thread, the Reddit post. It hadn't been from Becca. Someone else had spoken up, which meant there were others, people who still cared. I created an anonymous email address and posted a response. "If you've worked at MLEN and noticed changes that put people at risk, you're not alone. There are people who will listen and help." Within 2 days, I had 9 emails, all from current or recently departed employees. Most of them afraid, all of them angry. Stories of cuts to training hours, safety drills skipped. A forklift incident in Warehouse B that was never filed. But one email stopped me cold. "I was injured 2 weeks ago. Devon told me not to report it. Said it would look bad during audits. I had to use vacation time to heal. No name, no signature, just pain." That was the moment I knew silence wasn't an option anymore. I called Maya. She was in Boston finishing her graduate program, but she picked up on the first ring. "Hey, Mom. Everything okay?" "I need your help," I said. "Legal help." A pause, then "Tell me everything." By the end of the week, we had a plan. Maya connected me to a former professor who specialized in corporate whistleblower protections. We spent hours going through every note, every email, every piece of information I'd received. Everything had to be airtight, clean, documented. "You don't just want a story," the professor said, "you want change. That means being precise, and precise was something I knew how to be." Meanwhile, more messages trickled in. One from Raphael, a longtime technician, who said he'd nearly quit after his suggestion to fix the ventilation system was dismissed as unnecessary expense. Another from Janice, who said morale was so low, she'd caught one of her junior staff crying in the break room after being chewed out for asking too many questions. It was unraveling. Quietly but steadily. I didn't tell them I was behind the email account. I didn't need recognition. I needed truth. But the moment that sealed it came late one night. I got a message from an unknown number. Just a photo. A production line midship. Boxes stacked haphazardly. A spilled container on the floor. And in the background, a worker using duct tape to repair part of the sorting mechanism. I zoomed in and felt my stomach turn. That was the same sorting unit I'd warned them about during my last month. I'd logged the maintenance issue twice. It had been flagged for replacement. They hadn't replaced it. They'd patched it with tape. That's when the anger came. Not like a spark, but like a slow building fire. Because it was no longer about me being replaced. It was about the system being broken. And I wasn't going to watch it crumble from the sidelines anymore. Not when people could get hurt. Not when the people I trained were left cleaning up the mess of someone else's strategic shift. You'd think after 16 years of loyalty, walking away would be the hardest part. But no, the hardest part was realizing just how quickly they had buried everything I'd built. The following week, I received a call from Jerome, one of the plant's machine operators. His voice was tight with frustration. "They're blaming us now," he said. "Manage says the output issues are our fault, that we're not adapting fast enough to the new protocols." "Protocols?" I asked. "Yeah, Dion rolled out a new schedule system, reduced downtime, fewer rotation breaks. He says it's lean manufacturing, but it's chaos. We're exhausted. Mistakes are up. Everyone's on edge." I knew what that meant. Cutting rotation breaks might look efficient on paper, but in reality, it pushed people past their limit. And in production work, fatigue was dangerous. Slower reactions, less focus, higher risk of injury. "What about safety audits?" I asked. Jerome laughed bitterly. "They pushed the audit to next quarter. Said they needed time to prepare. It was classic damage control. Buy time. Shift blame. Hope no one notices." But I noticed. And I wasn't the only one. That weekend, I invited Becca, Raphael, and Janice to my house. No formal meeting, just coffee, sandwiches, and a whiteboard in my living room. It felt strange seeing them outside of the warehouse context. These were people I'd led for years. Now we sat as equals, strategizing like survivors. "I've documented everything I've received," I said, pointing to a binder I'd compiled. "We have enough here to show a pattern. Mismanagement, neglect, and retaliatory culture." Janice looked uneasy. "But what happens if we go public?" "They'll retaliate." "They already are," Becca said softly, just not loudly. Raphael leaned forward. "What do we want, Amanda? An apology? Or do we want accountability?" I met his gaze. "I want change. I want the people responsible to be seen. And I want the board to know what's happening under their nose." That's when the idea hit me. The board. They were always distant high-rise executives who saw the plant through spreadsheets and quarterly reports. But if they were made aware of what was really going on, documented and credible, they couldn't claim ignorance. So I made a decision. I wrote a letter, not an emotional rant, a case file, detailed, professional, supported by photos, testimonials, and internal data that had made its way to me. I outlined the decline since the leadership shift, the impact of the decisions, the risk it created, not just to people, but to their bottom line. I ended it with one line. "The plant may be your asset, but it's our livelihood. You can't fix what you refuse to see." I signed my name. No hiding, no anonymous email. I mailed it to every board member listed on Len's public financial disclosures. Maya helped me draft a second version. One that would go to a regional labor watchdog if the board didn't respond within 2 weeks. Not a threat, just a contingency. Then we waited. 10 days passed. Nothing. On the 11th day, I received an envelope by certified mail. Lean Corporate Affairs. Inside was a brief formal note from the board's compliance chair. "Miss Reyes, Thank you for your recent correspondence. We take these matters seriously and are reviewing the documentation you submitted. We will initiate a formal inquiry and will be in contact shortly. It wasn't an admission, but it was acknowledgement, and that was more than I expected. The next day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Amanda Reyes, the voice asked. Yes, this is Daniel Pratt. I'm the senior advisor to the board's risk committee. I'd like to meet off record, confidential, just you and me. We met in a neutral location, a small hotel conference room near the airport. He was younger than I expected, sharpied, carrying a tablet and a legal pad. He didn't waste time. The board had no idea the transition was going this badly. He said they were sold a narrative of innovation and cost efficiency. Your letter painted a very different picture. Because it is a very different picture, I replied. He nodded. You understand? If we investigate formally, it won't stay quiet. I'm not asking for quiet, I said calmly. I'm asking for truth. Daniel leaned back in his chair. Devon's position was championed by the current COO. If this unfolds the way I think it might, you're going to make powerful people very nervous. I'm not here to make friends, I said. I'm here to make sure no one else bleeds for someone else's spreadsheet. He didn't argue. He just closed his notepad and said, You'll be hearing from us soon. As I drove home, something shifted in me. For months, I'd been collecting other people's testimonies, other people's truths. But now the system was finally looking back, and I wasn't afraid of what it might see. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. 3 days after my meeting with Daniel Pratt, I got a call from Janice. Her voice was tight. Someone's asking questions about who leaked the information. I closed my eyes. Are you okay? I haven't said a word, Amanda. She replied, but it's getting weird. Devon suddenly pulled me off scheduling duties, said it's just temporary. She paused, then added, and Becca got reassigned to night shift without warning. It had begun. The pushback, the subtle retaliation companies use when they want to punish someone but don't want to get caught doing it. The next day, Raphael called me in a fury. They wrote me up for a mistake I didn't make. A mislabel on inventory. That section wasn't even mine. My stomach turned. This was what fear looked like from the top down. And I knew how it worked. Not with pink slips or dramatic terminations. Just enough pressure to make people doubt themselves. Isolate them, shame them into silence. But this time, I was ready. That evening, I opened the folder Maya and I had labeled Contingency Phase 2. Inside was a strategy we'd hoped we wouldn't need. Escalation protocols, media contacts, a pre-drafted letter to the Department of Labor, and testimonies sworn and notarized from Becca, Raphael, Janice, and 2 others who hadn't come forward publicly yet, but were willing to step up if it came to that. I reached out to Daniel. They're retaliating, I said silently, strategically. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I believe you, he said. But we need something actionable. A name, a pattern, hard documentation. I'll get it, I told him. But when I do, I want this addressed publicly. You have my word. That night, I stayed up past midnight, combing through emails forwarded to me. One from a supervisor who questioned Devon's overtime cuts and was then removed from the shift schedule for 2 weeks. Another from a young temp who had resigned after being scolded for slowing down the line during a heat wave. No fans, no AC, just sweat and pressure and fear. And then I got the file that broke me. It came from an anonymous address, no message, just a scan of an incident report. A 19-year-old worker had been hospitalized after collapsing on the production floor. Heat exhaustion. No ambulance was called. He was driven to urgent care by a coworker. The report was marked internal only and buried in a closed log. My hands shook as I read the timestamp. 3 weeks ago, they had buried it. I forwarded the file to Daniel and then to Maya. Her reply came instantly. We have enough. We move now. That morning, we submitted the formal complaint to the Department of Labor along with over 30 supporting documents and witness statements. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I called a journalist. Her name was Alina Foster, an investigative reporter I'd followed for years. She specialized in corporate accountability, quiet revolutions. When I told her the story, she didn't hesitate. On the record? She asked. Yes, I said, voice steady. Use my name. Use everything. I gave her access to the files, the testimonies, the photos. I even sent her the letter I wrote to the board. She asked sharp questions, took detailed notes, and then said the words I hadn't realized I needed to hear. You're not overreacting. You're doing what most people are too scared to do. The story was scheduled to run the following week, but even before it hit, something started to shift. Daniel called me again. This time, his tone was different. Internal legal is now involved. He said, the COO is under review. There's talk of pausing Devon's role pending the inquiry. I didn't celebrate because I knew retaliation has a long tail. The next day, my name was leaked. Someone inside MLEN, maybe HR, maybe Devon, told the staff who had filed the complaint, told them who had gone public. I found out from Janice, whose voice trembled with worry. They're calling you a traitor, saying you just want revenge. I didn't blame them. It's what management wanted them to believe. Because if they could turn me into the villain, they wouldn't have to face what they'd done. That night, Maya called. Are you okay? I hesitated. I don't know. I stood at the window, looking out over the quiet street. Somewhere in the city, Devon was probably spinning a new story. One where I was bitter, unqualified, difficult. But stories only work when people don't fight back. I thought of Becca on night shift, of Raphael and his fake write-up, of the young man who passed out while trying to earn a paycheck. And then I answered her. I'm scared, I said honestly, but I'm also done being quiet. The article went live on a Tuesday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee, trying to pretend the day would be normal. But when my phone buzzed and I saw Alina Foster's name, I knew it was time. The headline read, Inside MLEN Manufacturing, a Culture of Retaliation. The headline read, Inside MLEN Manufacturing, a Culture of Retaliation. Beneath it was my name in bold print, Amanda Reyes, former senior floor coordinator. My face wasn't pictured, but my words were. Every detail we documented, every testimony, every buried report, it was all there in black and white. Within hours, my phone exploded. Old colleagues messaged me quietly, thank you, you said what we couldn't. Others were angry, parroting management's line that I'd betrayed the company. By noon, the story had been shared thousands of times. Local news picked it up, then regional outlets. Suddenly, MLEN's strategic shift wasn't just a business decision, it was negligence. That evening, Daniel called again. His voice carried something I hadn't heard before, urgency. Amanda, the board is moving fast. Devon's been suspended pending investigation. The COO is, let's just say, under intense review. I didn't respond right away. My chest felt tight, not with fear this time, but with the weight of something bigger, accountability. 2 days later, the Department of Labor issued a statement. They were opening a formal inquiry into MLEN's safety practices. A hotline was set up for employees to submit concerns anonymously. Within 48 hours, they were flooded. The company scrambled. A public relations statement went out, full of corporate jargon about commitment to improvement and valuing employee safety. But it was too late. The cracks weren't cracks anymore. They were fractures, spreading wide in full daylight. The hardest moment, though, came from inside my own house. Maya sat with me at the kitchen table, the article pulled up on her laptop. She looked at me differently, not just as her mother, but as something more. You know you changed the course of this place, right? She said softly. I shook my head. I just told the truth. No, she insisted, her voice firm. You showed them they couldn't erase you. Or what you built. For the first time since that beige conference room meeting, I let myself cry. Not out of grief this time, but out of release. Weeks passed. The inquiry deepened. More employees stepped forward, emboldened by the fact that someone else had broken the silence. MLEN announced a restructuring of leadership, this time, not a euphemism. The COO resigned. Devon vanished from the press releases. And me? I wasn't offered my job back, and I didn't want it. What I wanted was already happening, a shift that couldn't be buried under emails or silenced in conference rooms. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about that factory floor. The hum of the machines, the rhythm of production, the team that once called me anchor. I don't miss the company. I miss the people, the work, the pride of building something real. But pride takes new forms. Now, when I walk past the diner off Route 9 or when my phone buzzes with another thank you, I realize something I never saw before. My story wasn't just about being replaced. It was about refusing to be erased. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough.